let's dive into some of this stuff. Keith Smith, by the way, he's an outstanding guy when it comes to the cap and all that kind of stuff. At Keith Smith NBA. Follow him on Twitter as he joins us for our weekly NBA conversation from Yahoo Sports NBA right here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Keith, welcome back, my man. What's going on?
I'll lie. I feel like the week since we've talked, the entire league is tilted on its axis. And if you remember, I've been saying every few years it's a summer major change, and I felt like this was going to be one, and that's already bearing down. We're still a week and a half from free agency actually opening.
Yeah, we're about 10 days away. So AD goes to the Lakers. Did you like the return for New Orleans there?
I did. I think they did quite well. It's often hard to do well in a superstar trade because you're generally working from behind the eight ball with that. And then with the fact that Davis and his camp had made it quite clear that there were only a couple destinations he wanted, that it even makes it harder. So, but, the Pelicans did really, really well. They stuck to their guns. They got three good young players who I think can help them in the near future as well as long term, as well as a boatload of picks and swaps and all kinds of stuff, and it looks like everything's lining up to be quite well for them in the future when they'll need to add assets around Zion Williamson as they usher one franchise player out the door to get the other walking in almost immediately behind him.
How about now, you're a cap guy, Keith. What's the cap situation for L.A.? Yes, they got AD. Yes, they have LeBron. Yes, they have Kuzma. Who else, and how much room do they have to add more?
Yeah, right now they're going to be sitting at about $23.7 million or so. They can get up to around 27 as Anthony Davis waives his trade bonus of $4 million. If they're allowed to, by the Pelicans, to say, hey, we want to sign the fourth pick and then trade him and do full salary matching, they can get to about $32.5 million. And now it sounds like they're also looking at ways to move off of contracts with a handful of guys that they've got left, like Mo Wagner, Isaac Bonga, Jamario Jones, and whether they put them in the deal or they move it there. They're trying to get up into that max salary range up well over $32-33 million, so that way they can go chase a max star to add alongside LeBron James and Anthony Davis.
All right, we got a trade today. It was Mike Conley going to Utah in exchange for Grayson Allen, Kyle Korver, Jay Crowder, and a protected 2020 first-round pick. Do you like this is obviously the Jazz saying we can't be a player in free agency, so we've got to make a move like this.
Yeah, Memphis also get the 23rd pick in this year's draft as well, too. We don't want to leave that out from the equation. So they did quite well in this deal. I think for the Jazz, you're spot on it. They know they're not a free agent destination. They have to do their work through drafting, retaining, draft, develop, resign, that philosophy. And then when you can't do that, you make smart moves through trades. It's been that way for a number of years for the Jazz, and they were able to do that in this deal. They went and got, a really, really good player, Mike Conley. Now, some have questioned, it doesn't seem like they gave up all that much to go get him. Well, Conley's owed, close to $70 million over the next two seasons. So that's a tough pill for a lot of teams to swallow. But for Utah, they're close. And what you're looking at now is the potential starting five of Rudy Gobert, Derek Favors, Joe Ingles, Donovan Mitchell, and Mike Conley. That's a five that can compete with any five that's going to be together in the league as it stands today.
Yeah, Conley's interesting. He's 31 years old. You mentioned the contract, but you can make the argument that, all right, he's only 31, but I only have to pay him for 2 more years. Yes, I'm paying big money, but I almost rather say I'll pay you for 2 years, get you at 31, 32, rather than sign a guy like, all right, the Sixers, they're got to decide what to do with Jimmy Butler. If they're going to sign him, it's going to be for 5 years, which means you're going to be in that Chris Paul's area where you're paying a guy $40+ million when he's 35 years old. I don't know. I mean, would you rather pay Conley for 2 years or sign someone to that supermax? Like, in that vein, I like what Utah did, just saying, all right, we'll take you for 2 rather than get involved. Not that they're not going to get Jimmy Butler for 5 to go to Utah. I get that. He can only get 4 to go there. But if you're the Sixers, would you sign a guy for 5 or rather pay a guy for 2 or any of these other teams in free agency? I almost like the Conley move just because he's only there for 2 years.
Yeah, generally my philosophy is if you keep a contract to 1 or 2 years, you almost really can't overpay a guy. It's so easy in the NBA to get out of things with a year left. We see this all the time. We call a lot of these contracts quote unquote untradeable, but then you get to a point where I can move off that money. It becomes a problem when, like you mentioned with Chris Paul, when you're looking 3 years out and there's $45 million on the books. That's something that scares away just about everybody. So, well, what the challenge is, what Utah was able to do here was a combination of send salary out as well as some of their salary cap space, which allows them to be in a position to absorb the big number for Conley. The challenge generally is if you're trading for a guy who's making that much money, you're having to gut your roster pretty deep just to match salary in that deal.
Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA from Yahoo Sports, Real GM. Chris Middleton declined his player option. A lot of people just assume the Bucks are going to get back together. Is this Middleton move the first step of maybe that not happening, or is this expected? And do we expect Middleton back in the Bucks, or could there be teams that sneak in there and line up for Middleton?
Yeah, so the first part, fully expected. Middleton was on one of the absolute best contracts in the NBA over the last few years, only making about $12-13 million. That was not going to continue past this past season, so he opted out. That was fully expected. Now what you're expecting to see here is him to leave with Milwaukee. They can pay him more. It sounds like they're willing to go to his full 5-year max. Now, to do that, but other teams are going to ask. They're going to at least try to get meetings with him and see. I generally look at these things as if you hear a guy goes right away and resign, that means there's never any intention but that. If you start hearing a day or two later and, well, I'm going on some meetings, that's when you need to start getting worried. So I think that first opening couple hours, day or so of free agency is going to be really important for a guy like Chris Middleton to see, is he just sort of sure coming back, or are we looking at potentially something different?
All right, a lot of other things happening here. What about what's going on in Boston? You've got the Kyrie, he's ghosting them, and then, of course, Al Horford. And it sounds like the Boston Celtics think there might have been some tampering situation going on here where Horford all of a sudden decided, you know what, I think I'm going to try my hand on the open market here. What's going on in Boston? It seems that this thing is crumbling before their very eyes.
Yeah, so let's talk about the tampering thing. I'm not hearing that coming from the team. That seems to be being suggested by the media versus the team. I think what you're looking with the team is everybody does this. Everybody tampers. How in the world do these guys, back when the deadline was midnight, how was Woj firing out tweets at 12:01 that so-and-so agreed to sign somewhere? They had never had a conversation until theoretically at 12 o'clock. That's just absolutely absurd. We all know what's going on. I think it only becomes a problem when someone like Magic Johnson, who's doing it blatantly on the late night talk show circuit, that's when it's a problem. But I will tell you that it is with Boston, they're kind of pivoting now. They are basically resigned that they're going to lose Kyrie Irving, and now they're getting really close to him to believing that they're going to lose Al Horford as well. Kyrie, that was kind of that ship sailed a while back, is the sense I'm getting from all parties involved. And then when Anthony Davis wasn't able to be consummated a trade there, that really was done. As far as Horford goes, their hope was to re-sign him, but when it was started to get out there that his camp believes he can get a 4-year deal in excess of $100 million, that's just a little too rich and a little too long for Boston, who's going to say, all right, you know what, we'll pivot and we'll start building around the kids here and kind of do what the initial intention of this rebuild was from the beginning. Yeah,
the Celtics thing is very interesting to keep an eye on. I mean, if Horford and Kyrie were to walk, do they basically turn this team over to Tatum, or do they try to get in? They got a lot of assets. Would you anticipate that they would be active tomorrow night?
Yeah, so the first part of the question is I think they'll turn it over to Tatum and Brown and basically say, this is your squad, lead us forward, with knowing that the real team leader on the roster is really Marcus Smart, as he has been for any number of years now. And then what they'll do is they'll hope for better health and better play from Gordon Hayward. Every sign is they believe that's going to happen. And Paul George was very vocal that it took him until his second year of being back before he felt anything like himself on the court again. And Hayward had flashes, so the Celtics are hoping that he's going to get back. As far as tomorrow night, they're going to be active simply because they have 3 first-round picks, and Danny Ainge on the record said they're not bringing in 3 rookies next season. That's not going to happen. You don't do that for a couple reasons. One, it's too many guys if you're trying to win games that have never been in the league before. And on the flip side, it makes your cap sheet messier than it needs to be down the line, because what ends up happening is, let's say you hit on all of them, they're all really good, then you got to pay them all at the exact same time. So what they're going to do is they're going to look to package picks to move up, or they'll look to trade one completely and trade out for a future pick, in a year or two, or what they'll do is they'll draft and stash a player. There's no way that they're going to use all 3 of those picks on guys who come to training camp with the Celtics this fall.
All right, so much to dive into here on this offseason. Kyrie, a lot of people hearing Nets. There was some thought about the Knicks. There was some potential of, all right, how about him going out to L.A.? What is the thought with what Kyrie might want to do? I mean, does he want to be the man on a team, or has he already said, maybe that's not for me? I'll go someplace and be the secondary player. What's your intel say on Kyrie? I know Boston's a team that you're close with.
Yeah, let me preface this with anybody who says they know what Kyrie is doing is either joking or fooling themselves. It's just nobody knows. He's such a different guy. So, but with that said, I think what you're really looking at there is, for Kyrie, is as you kind of laid out, it looks like it's probably going to be the Brooklyn Nets, I would say, with an outside chance of the Lakers. Now, I'm not sure he really wants to go and be the 3rd guy on the Lakers. I think he either wants to go somewhere and be 1 or 1A at best. The Knicks were in this thing, but once Kevin Durant got hurt, that maybe scuttled those opportunities. And at least if they signed Durant, we know he's not going to be ready for a year. That kind of seemed to really change things for Kyrie. He was considering going back to Boston when it looked like they were in the Anthony Davis sweepstakes. This is why with Kyrie, it doesn't surprise me if, don't be shocked if all of a sudden you hear some team you've never heard of, mentioned over the next week or so, just because, again, he's a different kind of guy. But all signs at this point, most comfortable look like he's headed to Brooklyn.
All right, let's go to our next item of business here. You're in Orlando. We saw a lot of videos with Markelle Fultz last year. No videos yet, but shoulder rehab been going, quote, very well. He's in Orlando working out. He's committed. He's 2 feet in. Are the Magic, I don't want to say depending, but anticipating Markelle Fultz helping them next year?
Yeah, I'm glad you made that clarification. They are certainly not depending on it, but they are hopeful. Their hope is that he can come in and they can really bring him in, work him in slowly off the bench, as playing both a little bit of the 1 and a little bit of the 2, bring him in behind DJ Augustin, whoever else they acquire this summer, and that's the hope is out of the relative limelight here in Orlando. There's we're lucky if we have 1 or 2 national media at any game. It's pretty quiet down here. It's about the same 8-10 guys here, and the hope is that he can really kind of come into his own here. All accounts are he looks pretty good as far as health goes and being able to contribute and make an impact on the court. So fingers crossed that he's going to figure it out and get back for Orlando, who really stole him for next to nothing in the end. And if he blossoms and pans out, that's a monster asset and trade for the Magic that they made.
Yep, I've been on record saying I think that trade's going to end up blowing up in the Sixers' face, and the ROI just wasn't there. I mean, you had the number 1 pick. Why not just hold on to him? All right, unless he was a total distraction behind closed doors or whatever, but they just did not get anything significant in return for a player who could go on. He's only 21 years old. If he was 24, 25 and still kind of hasn't found his way, but 21 years old, I think I got to give him another shot. I don't like the deal for Philly, and I'm very intrigued to see what happens with him in Orlando there, who, by the way, will be do you think that Orlando, with Vucevic, is he in danger of leaving?
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity. I think what the Magic are trying to do here is they're trying to thread the needle a little bit and not overpay these guys. So Nick Vucevic and Terrence Ross being their 2 big free agents. What they'd like to do is kind of split the difference, pay them a lot of money, but it goes back to what I said. only over a year or two. So, it might even be contracts where if you looked at them as their average annual value, you'd be like, holy cow, that's an overpay, but it's a year or two. Because if you look at it, they've got Mo Bamba. That was the guy who was drafted to be the, center of the future here. Now, he got some struggles in his rookie year, predictably. They knew he was going to be a project, as well as he was hurt then for most of the second half of the season. So what you're looking to do here is you're not going to pay for Vooch on anything resembling a max contract offer. Some team comes in and throws that massive offer at him, then I think the Magic are going to say, hey, all the best to you. Thank you for what you did, and we're going to move forward, in a different direction.
Keith Smith, Yahoo Sports NBA, here on the Sports Bash Boardwalk Honda Hotline. All right, Keith, tomorrow night, Zion, Ja Morant. Where do you think the draft really starts? Is it at 3 or is it at 4 where the first surprise maybe comes in?
I actually think it's at 5. I think you're going to see Barrett for sure to the Knicks at 3, and then Darius Garland to the Pelicans at 4. Now, if the Pelicans move that pick, then throw that out the window because we don't know. But I think those are the 4 best players: Zion, Ja, R.J. Barrett, and then Darius Garland. I think those guys have kind of set themselves apart just a little bit from everybody else through workouts and through their overall body of work between both NCAA, high school, international, those types of things. So that's where it really gets interesting. I've heard repeatedly from people that this draft really is flat, and there are a lot of teams, whether you say 4, 5, 6, 7 maybe, but all the way back as late as 25, there are teams that are saying this is where a lot of the movement can come in, because guys might look at it and say, well, we're 2 picks away, and the guy we really liked is there. We didn't expect him to still be there, and that's when you say, we can't wait any longer. We're going to have to throw caution to the wind. We'll move up and go get him. There will be some teams that will say, all right, our guy's still there. Let's drop back a pick or 2, and maybe he'll still be there again, and we'll pick him. And that's where people are saying it's not the deepest draft. I think what it is it's not deep in potential superstars and all-stars, but it's deep in rotation and quality guys, and that makes for a very interesting night.
Yeah, and the Sixers with, 4 second-round picks, 4 second-round picks. They got 5 overall picks. I heard the Lakers, they're looking for second-round picks. Elton Brand mentioned selling picks yesterday. So it seems that with 4 second-round picks, the Sixers might be a very active team tomorrow night.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I know a lot of people like, they got to fill out depth. Well, they can fill out depth through veteran signings on the minimum and things like that. Again, they're not bringing in 5 rookie guys then next year on the roster. That would be a massive mistake. So I would expect them to trade or sell off at least 1 or 2 of those picks. And the nice thing is if you're a brand, what you do is you sell a couple, and then you have that money, it doesn't turn into cash raise or anything, but you turn around to ownership and say, hey, remember when I made you a couple $1 million by selling a couple picks? I want to go a little over the cap or dip into the tax to do this. What do you think about that for this guy? And ownership's a lot more likely to say, yeah, go ahead, that's fine. We're good because you brought us some return on investment that we really weren't going to do anything with.
You mentioned that you think the top 4 picks are pretty set in with Zion, Ja Morant, R.J. Barrett, and then Garland from Vanderbilt. Who is your next favorite player at that next spot there at number 5? Or if there's a guy that could sneak into the top 4, who would that guy be?
Yeah, if someone's going to sneak into the top 4, I think it'll be Jarrett Culver. He's the next guy who I think we really like. I think a lot of teams are kind of enamored with his two-way ability, that he can really defend and get after it. And I think there's some sense that he's going to be a pretty good scorer at the NBA level. Probably not a 20-point-per-game guy, but definitely a guy you can fit into your rotation and not have to worry too much about. So he's the guy I like. There's 2 guys I like quite a bit that they're kind of projections are all over the place. They kind of leads into this draft. But I really like Nasir Little out of North Carolina. He's a kid who a lot of people got down on because he didn't have a big year in North Carolina. But when you look at his frame, his physicality, all his physical profile, as well as the things he did prior to getting to North Carolina, I think he's going to be pretty good. And then I don't know really anybody at this point who doesn't like Brandon Clark out of Gonzaga. This is maybe one of the guys who's most ready to come in and play in the NBA almost immediately, because he's going to be a contributing defensive player right off the bat, but he's also very intelligent, and he's got just enough offensive game that he can play the rotation spot day one.
And he's a junior. This is interesting, because the whole, you draft young guys with the ceiling against these juniors and seniors, and there's some interesting upperclassmen, Jerome, Thibault, Cam Johnson. I know when the Sixers pick at 24, those names keep coming up because Elton Brand had said that he's interested in a veteran college player, somebody who's ready to play right away. So those are some interesting names. Any of those guys that you think, will get overlooked and be able to play, maybe even though they're deeper in the draft?
Yeah, I like all the guys' names that you just threw out. I think they all bring different things. Thibault's going to be a terrific defender right away from day one to really defend probably three positions, all of the 1, 2, and 3 positions. That's huge for where the league's going. You want those versatile defenders. Johnson's a great shooter. He might be one of the best shooters in the draft. But a guy you didn't mention who I really like, who's a senior, that is really coming along strong in these workouts is Dylan Windler out of Belmont. He is a kid who has really started to gain a lot of fans. And guys are looking at it when you're kind of towards the end of the first round, into the second round. A lot of times teams are, what's your one skill that can keep you on the floor? Well, Windler can shoot the crap out of the ball. So what people are going to look at there is, let's have this guy, because at least at the very least we know we can bring him in. And he's going to be a shooter for us off our bench for any number of years going forward. And what's really important with that is that's how guys find roles. If you go all the way back, Kyle Korver, that's really what he was for a long time. Now he's probably not Korver's level of shooting because he's an all-time great shooter, but this kid's going to find a home. And don't be surprised if he gets drafted in the first round simply because of the way he shoots the ball.
Yeah, another guy a lot of people had an eye on because of the NCAA tournament was Carson Edwards. He's a junior. Windler, by the way, a couple of mock drafts, I see him going to the Sixers. Also Cam Johnson, he's been going to the Sixers in a lot of spots too. It all goes down tomorrow night. You can hear the draft live on 97.3 ESPN. The coverage starts at 7 o'clock. He is Keith Smith. You can follow him on Twitter at Keith Smith NBA, and he joins us weekly for some NBA conversation. You can find him at Yahoo Sports, Real GM, the Front Office Show on Twitter, and at Celtics Blog as well. So more NBA, of course, is the offseason 10 days away. All right, man, we will catch up next week.
Absolutely. By the time I come on next week, we're going to have a spreadsheet out in front of us so we can remember who's where.
That's right, and we'll be just about at free agency kicking off. Then he is Keith Smith. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. And he appeared like August on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline.